And hello, this is Eamonn O'Brien, and you're so welcome to the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series. And coming up today, we're going to talk about the power and the importance of having personal relationships with the audience that you have in front of you, and in particular, the power of your stories. And I am absolutely thrilled today to be joined all the way from the other side of the Atlantic with Ted Rubin. Now, if you don't know who Ted is a brand evangelist. He is the author of Return on Relationships. He's an international keynote speaker. And he is also a fellow who has an extraordinary array of colorful socks and waistcoats. So, Ted, so delighted to have you.
Well, Eamon, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about our conversation, and I love your room. It's like you have this nice study where you do your recordings.
Yeah.
The only thing is, it's having me a little distracted because I'm trying to read the titles of the books.
Well, yeah, well, some people do that. So, well, that's good. A little bit of distraction never hurt anybody. Yeah. So, obviously, as an author of Return on Relationship, and one of the things that I'm really struck by when I listen to you is you're constantly talking about the importance of personal connection. Now, as a speaker, what does personal connection mean to you, and why is it so darned important?
Well, personal connection does not necessarily mean that you know the people that you're speaking to. What it really means is you're paying attention to the people you're speaking to, and you're also bringing them into your world. When we refer to storytelling, I'm not just telling stories for the sake of stories. I'm telling stories that make an emotional connection with the audience, number one, but that also bring what I'm trying to get across into their world in a way that they can really wrap their arms around and understand it. And then as far as connecting with them, I'm always like, I don't like stages where I can't see the people in the audience. Very often I will ask the producers if they can turn the lights down a little bit that are facing me, or turn the lights up a little bit in the audience. Now, I understand for their recording purposes, for dramatic effect, they want the stage very often lit up and the audience dark. But I want to see how people are reacting to what I'm saying. You'll notice when I speak, if you either see me speak or you watch a recording of it, I am not reading from a speech. I have guides, I have points that I want to make, and then it's really different every time because I'm speaking to the audience. And I will watch and see how they're reacting to that. And if I see the heads nodding, if I see people making comments to each other, if I see smiles, I know that I'm making that connection.
And actually, that's kind of a good segue, because that's quite right. I mean, I think one of the things that's very obvious when anybody watches you speak is that you're absolutely interacting with the audience. And in fact, I remember we were having a chat in a pub in Dublin, and you were talking about how one of your pet peeves is this notion of an audience being spoke at,
right,
instead of with. So really, I suppose it's about the conversation.
Well, it's like any other conversation. If I'm talking to you either here or face-to-face in a more personal situation, I'll look at you and say, I don't think you're getting what I'm saying. Or I'll realize that maybe I've run off on a tangent and I've lost you. You're gazing around the room. You're looking at other people coming in. Now, that also could be that you just didn't really care about my answer, because that happens sometimes too. But I'm trying to look at the audience to make sure I'm connecting, because I will re-steer my talk in a way that's more relevant to them if I feel I'm not getting to them. Now, when you speak internationally, that can be a little bit more difficult because different audiences react differently, especially in different countries. And I find that in general, European audiences tend to not show their emotions as much when they watch, the way an American audience does. But I have to tell you that, when I recently spoke in Ireland, I found that not to be the case. The audience was so engaged, and they were listening so intently and giving me that feedback that I so much need and desire, that I was really pleased with that, and I felt that I was really able to connect with them.
Well, I think that you were very well received, and most everyone I spoke with really said that they really enjoyed it. And one of the things that we do a lot in Ireland is we get down home a lot. So if you like, in terms of conversation, that's a very natural thing. So perhaps it's not as reserved.
Well, as another little, just to throw some kudos more to Ireland, I'm wearing my "Be Good to People" shirt, which I wear often, and I have to tell you that one of the things I love most about being there is the culture is just so welcoming. The people are so incredibly friendly, and what I really love is how proud everybody is of their country.
Yeah.
I mean, and the way they're really willing to show it. In other words, it's not that I don't believe in the U.S. people are proud of their country, but I don't see them just as much as like, oh, you have to see this. And, the taxi drivers were giving me history lessons. It was,
Wonderful. Well, it's very hard to go anywhere in Ireland without people telling you stories, and I know
yes,
that's a very important thing for you.
a storytelling culture for sure.
For sure. Well, let me ask you this. So, obviously you tell a lot of stories, but if you were thinking about the story that you tell that you find has the most resonance almost everywhere you go, what would that be? And can you put your finger on why you think it connects?
I think the stories that connect the most with my audience are when I talk about my daughters. And I talk
Okay.
about being a divorced dad. And I talk about having to fight to keep my daughters in my life. Now, I've spoken about that very specifically only once at a
Yeah.
conference that was about, it was called Dad 2.0, and it was about dads and dad bloggers and things like that. But I refer to it in what I've learned from them and how I relate it to the rest of life, whether it's to personal relationships or it's to business relationships or it's to how to connect with people. Everybody is either a parent and or was a child.
Yeah.
So, even if you're not a parent, you were a child at one point. So
Yeah.
you have everybody feels a connection to that story about how parents and children might connect. And so when I talk about my daughters or how I learned about moments and properly finding those moments to have conversations in business, and I tell a story about the first time my 15-year-old daughter talked to me about boys, and what I learned from that,
Haven't
and
got that one yet, but okay.
in the future. And for me, it was a very big deal because I'm a divorced dad. I'm not around for those. I wasn't around for those everyday conversations. I wasn't at the dinner table every night. I mostly had my daughters on weekends and time off, so the conversations weren't the same. But I find that really connects with people. When you talk about life experiences that everybody's had,
Yeah.
and it's not like also when I talk about experience I've had in travel or with an airlines or a hotel, everybody can nod their head because in one way or another, they've had that experience. Showing up and your reservation isn't there. Going into a room that isn't what was expected. A flight not taking off, flights being delayed, not getting the kind of information that you'd want or expect from the airline. Like I always tell when I travel, I'm very, very rarely upset with an airline for canceling my flight or delaying my flight. I understand that I'm a very frequent traveler. What I am upset with is when I can't get the right information,
Sure.
when I can't be told it's being delayed. Well, I know it must be being delayed. It's supposed to take off at 11 o'clock and there's not even a plane at the gate. So
Yeah.
why does it still say it's taking off at 10:50?
Yeah.
Those kind of things I think all of us experience. And when you relate stories around customer service, around customer experience, around sales, around any of these things to things that we've all experienced, people can connect and understand.
I think you're right. I think it's very human, and I suppose really that's the most important element that I kind of want to delve into because for I like your be good to people there again. One of the things that you talk a lot about, of course, in terms of return on relationship, is this notion of at a human level to constantly be giving, not with the hope of expecting to get something back. And that's something which is very, very personal to the people that you meet. Maybe share an experience or two that you've had that might be interesting for folks about how you got into this mindset and what you learned from it.
Well, first of all, I want to make sure we're clear on the mindset. We all want something in return. What I like to talk about is not expecting anything directly in return. There's
Correct.
very few Mother Teresas in the world. It's very hard for people to relate to, oh, you don't want anything back. But what I like to say is do for others without expectation of anything directly in return, because then you will build a reputation for being there for people. And I like to say a brand is what a business or a person does. A reputation is what people remember and share.
Yeah.
So what people share more about me is that every city I go to, I'm willing to meet with people. And if somebody reaches out who I don't even know and they want to have coffee, I offer them some times or some ways to do it or when to reach back to me when I might be available. That's my reputation. And I believe that spreads much more than, oh, Ted's a social marketing strategist. And I think that's where, because there's so many thousands of strategists and evangelists and workers and accountants, but there's very few that people can say, this person really cares about you. So where a lot of this came from is First of all, look, if you don't have that in you to begin with, it's going to be hard to find it. And look, it isn't easy for all of us, but I've always been a networker. What I've recognized in recent years is that what I've really been way beyond the networker is I'm a community builder. I bring people together. I bring all my friends know each other, even when they're from different walks of life or different places. And I have many different communities that I bring together in different places. And for me, the big realization that really turned me around was, look, I had to fight to keep my daughters in my life. This happened from around 2007 to 2011. It was an incredibly difficult thing. It bankrupted me. I stopped working. I went into debt. People told me in all walks of life to give up. The people in the courts tell you to give up. They tell you to come back when your daughters are adults. It's just not where I come from. I grew up not only with parents that didn't believe in that, but I had a wrestling coach who became a very big part of my life, who I still see now every year, even though he lives across the country. And his whole thing was, the expression, it's not over till it's over, or it's not over till the fat lady sings is another one. His thing was, it's never over. There's always another challenge, another opportunity, another person that needs help, another friend that wants something or needs something. Everything always goes on. And when one wise ass on the team would always raise his hand and say, well, what about when you die, coach? He'd say, it's not over then either, because your legacy lives on. And what happened for me is that I went through this fight for my daughters, and it bankrupted me, and I lost years with them and time with them and good time with them, that when it was over, I was very angry. And it was a part of my day life. I would rant all the time. I would talk to my friends about it. I would not have a smile on my face the way I always did. And, I even got to the point where I was going to start a website about it this is probably like 2007. So before Facebook really became as huge as it was. And it was called Rant About Your Ex. And I'm very lucky that I had good friends that were willing to humor me, make believe they were going to help me start this thing. We had meetings about it. We created IP. And they never intended on starting this. They were waiting for me to come to the realization that this was not where I wanted to be. Just like you can't take someone who's a drug addict or an alcoholic and make them go to rehab. It only works when they make that decision themselves. And I woke up one morning as they let me work through this, and I said, I don't want to be angry anymore. I want to be like a kid. I want to default to happy. How many adults do you know default to happy? They default to stressed, angry, worried, nervous. But most kids in their most natural state default to happy. And I made a critical decision. I wanted to do this. And fortunately, as I started doing it, the feedback was remarkable. And I will venture this to anybody out there. If you start being good to people and just being nice, and when someone bumps into you on the street, instead of having the natural inclination, hey, I'm a New Yorker, my natural inclination is to look back and go, hey, buddy. But instead now, I smile. And I'm going to tell you what the results of that are. And I guarantee you'll get the same results. Number one is people react differently to you. And that's a good feeling. But more importantly, you feel better yourself right here.
Yeah.
Right there. Right in the heart. It makes you feel better. So as much as you might be doing it for others, you're really doing it for yourself. Yeah. And then if you give it the time, you will see the way people react differently to you.
Yeah, I like that actually because, and interestingly, just yesterday I watched a TED Talk, which was it's only a 12-minute one by a group of folks from Harvard, and they did a study on happiness. It's a 75-year study, the longest ever done.
I've seen that one.
And it's fascinating because what was the number one thing that made people happy? It was the sense of being connected.
Right.
People that matter to you, and also how you relate to people around you within community.
Think about how great you feel
when
someone takes the time to look at your Facebook page or look at your posts to know that you're in Florida or that you're enjoying a vacation. And when they get, I mean, you can't do this all the time, but I try very hard before I get on a call to look at somebody if I'm connected to them or if their page is available. I make my page available to everybody. You don't have to be my friend to see my Facebook page, and to see what I'm posting on other sites, on Instagram and other places. And I want people to feel that, and you'll see how people feel about that. So and I love that. And I also love that Ted uses my name. I love that all these.
And there you go.
How fabulous is that?
Yeah. Well, listen, can I thank you for joining me today? But before we finish up, I want to finish up with maybe one rounding out question. Thinking about how you communicate today, not just on the stage, but also through video, which is increasingly more important through audio and what have you. If there was any one piece of advice that you would give to people who want to do a better job connecting with others, what would be top of your list?
Call them by name,
Ah, yes.
especially when you're communicating digitally, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Look, this is something I've practiced, but it's something I learned from the best social media book ever written. And I want to tell your audience about this because it's really important. And I know you're all sitting there thinking it's going to be one of my books or the book of some, pundit that you know from the social media world. But the clue I'm going to give you is it was written in 1936.
Ah, yes, I think I know.
It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People
Right.
by Dale Carnegie. I
Good.
talk about this all the time because Dale Carnegie was the best at talking about what's important to the person you're trying to connect with. Calling them by name is the most important thing. Every person in any language, the most beautiful word to their ears is the sound of their own name. So if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere, you'll notice that the majority of the time, not all the time, sometimes I'm busy, sometimes I forget, sometimes I can't find their name, but I will almost always reply to people by name in a tweet. Thanks for the retweet, Eamonn. Thank you, George. Really appreciate that, Lori. Because people know, first of all, that you're then doing what I call looking them in the eye digitally. You're recognizing who they are. And then mention something about them. Make it about them. Look at their thing. Ask them what their day is like. It means so much to people. And to me, that's what's the most important part about being able to make that personal connection.
Well, you know what? That's a fantastic way to finish. It is all about personal conversation for personal connection. And can I thank you for joining me today?
Oh, well, no, more importantly, I'd like to thank you for asking me to be here, for making this happen, for reaching out to me. Look, it's not always easy. We both have busy schedules, but we made it work. And thank you for being a little flexible this morning. I wasn't sure exactly what was happening. And, you didn't give me the old, well, you're late. We're not doing it.
Good. Well, listen, I'm so glad that you were able to join with me today. And thank you for watching the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series. And until the next time, here's to awesome speaking.